Welcome to the Learning Culture Revolution. I am Rafael Alvarez, the director of the San Diego City College Mathematics, Engineering, Science Achievement Program, the MESA program, and this revolution was born in my program. The mission in this revolution is to increase student success and transform student lives. To understand why this revolution matters, it is necessary to begin by looking at the 6-year completion rates for students who first began their college studies in 2014, as reported by the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. The rates correspond to entering university students on the left and entering community college students on the right. After 6 years, on average, community college students completed their studies at a rate 37% lower than the completion rate for university students. And, on average, Hispanic and Black students completed at a rate 32% lower than the completion rate for Asian and white students. However, we know that these completion rates do not reflect the great potential that all students have. And this is why the learning culture revolution is so critical. Students are simply in the dark about the learning culture that exists in every institution of higher education. But the time has come to turn on the lights. This is a new day, because I have started a learning culture revolution to help transform student lives, your lives. I founded the City College MESA program in 2000, but this revolution began in 2009, when I found this research in which successful first-generation students were interviewed to understand what it takes for college readiness and success. The researchers identified 10 important factors, which they grouped into 3 categories. However, factor number 10 was my epiphany. Very simply, to be successful, students must understand the college system, college standards, and the culture of college. I too was a first-generation engineering student at Harvey Mudd College. Yet, coming from East San Diego, I didn't know anyone from my neighborhood who went to college. What did I know about the learning culture? Nothing. But I knew instantly that the students in the study were right. There is a learning culture in every institution of higher education. However, students are not made aware of it when they begin their college studies. I then made it my mission to explicitly train my students in the learning culture to help transform their lives. We're all familiar with culture as an ethnic culture, a group culture, or a family culture, and we enjoy being part of many cultures. One of my favorite cultures is the lowrider culture, and many of my compadres own lowriders. But to understand the learning culture, it is first necessary to recognize that every culture has 2 main parts, as illustrated by this culture iceberg. The surface part is easily seen and can be experienced in many ways, but the things in the deep part cannot be seen, yet they exist, and they are often very important. Here are 2 parts of the learning culture. Certainly, it is important to know how to effectively approach the learning. However, the more important and larger part is having a mindset for learning. It is also important to recognize that the learning culture is primarily deep culture, which means that it is not easily seen or learned by students. The result is that students are generally in the dark about the learning culture. Before turning on the lights on this learning culture revolution, I am very proud to introduce you to our MESA legend, Mr. Ferrari, to illustrate the power of the learning culture.
Hello, my name is Francis Rowe, and I got an A in Calculus 1. My major is mechanical engineering. I started the MESA program with only 3 weeks left in my spring semester. The whole time I was trucking, I was trying as hard as I possibly could. And without the MESA program, I would have never gotten an A. I was working, I studied, I tried everything, and I thought I was, making headway. I got my first test back, I got a B, and I was just so depressed. I felt like, man, why am I even doing this? I'm trying as hard as I can, and I can never get an A. And after the first time I was introduced to this, after my first test, I got an A back, and it felt like things were working. It felt like I got my first, it felt like what it must have felt like when they learned what fire was. Could you imagine what that's like? This MESA program I can't even explain it. I'm going to pass this on to my kids' kids, and I want this to be a culture, because it's kind of like someone handing you a Ferrari. It's basically the same thing. You learn it, you become an engineer, and you buy a Ferrari. I'm lost for words how amazing this program is.
Wow! For Mr. Ferrari, the learning culture experience was like discovering fire. What will be your experience? These 5 parts capture the learning culture which I have defined and developed in my program, and I have now created a training video for each part. This is a cornerstone of the learning culture revolution because these videos are available online, so you too can be trained in the learning culture. First, part 1 explains why learning culture. Part 2 is the most important part of the learning culture, and it captures what is meant by having a mindset for learning, beginning with potential. We don't question potential in the learning culture. All students have many strengths and great potential, but they also have gaps. The challenge for students is to learn the learning culture and use it to fill their gaps. Next is commitment. Student commitment is questioned in the learning culture. This is expectation number 1. It is about responsibility and choice. When making choices, do you choose to be a creator and accept responsibility, take action, and seek solutions? Or do you choose to be a self-saboteur and blame, complain, and make excuses? Only creators can truly be committed. In the learning culture, all students must also know the secret to success. That is, you must want it as much as you want to breathe. And this must be demonstrated through actions, not words, because talk without action is cheap. Other important factors include self-advocacy, emotional intelligence, mental toughness, and goal focus. In particular, self-advocacy means that you must fight for yourself. This is the opposite of being shy. Success requires self-advocacy. And emotional intelligence is not only important for academics, it is required for leadership. Additionally, students must know the purpose for the learning, that is, freedom. Because freedom gives you the ability to define yourself and not be defined by others, outcomes, or situations. I will return to this in my closing. Finally, armed with this learning mindset, embracing vulnerability is not a question. It is what you do to become a successful student and courageous leader. Part 3 uses a why, what, and how format to review strategies for knowing how to effectively approach the learning. These strategies form the foundation for approaching the learning in STEM and non-STEM classes. And this foundation has 3 main parts, including the big picture approach to problem solving, the formula for approaching the learning, and other key strategies for learning, including a semester kickoff tool and a tool for interacting with faculty during week number 1 to begin establishing strong relationships with professors. Additionally, a process of reflection and application is explained to help you master the approach to the learning. This process is focused on building on strengths and filling any existing gaps with the learning culture. Finally, a 10-point strategic plan for university success is provided to make the most of your university experience and give you the best opportunity for success after graduation. Overall, the steps in knowing how to approach the learning are basic and well-defined. Yet this is an area where students who are unaware of the learning culture may have many gaps. Additionally, Part 4 focuses on leadership, internships, and research, because beyond developing scholars, the learning culture develops leaders. The Clifton Strengths Assessment is a powerful tool to help students identify and develop their top 5 most dominant strengths. The Culture of Effective Leadership includes a collection of 3 books, which forms the foundation for leadership development, plus other recommended reading from the Mesa Leadership Book Club. The Resume Overview section reviews basics for writing a quality and dynamic resume, including having an understanding of your career arc, professional canvas, and professional brand. The Interview Tips section reviews basic tips and strategies for succeeding in interviews, including the STAR response technique for interviews and sample criteria used by interviewers to rate applicants, so that you will know how you will measure up. The Summer Research Program section provides resources for finding, applying to, and succeeding in summer programs, including a strategic plan for making the most of your summer program experience. And tips are also provided for strategically using LinkedIn to manage your professional brand, create new opportunities, and build your network. Finally, Part 5 reviews educational planning basics including degrees and certificates, educational planning, and drops and withdrawals. The home base for this revolution is a turningonthelights.com website, featuring learning culture resources and videos, including a self-paced interactive learning culture training plan and a report on the impact of the self-paced training. Additionally, the book Turning on the Lights, Using Learning Culture to Increase Student Success, serves as a reference tool with complete details, how-to instruction, and up to 40 student stories to bring the learning culture to life. Lessons Learned for Higher Education Practitioners is also provided as a companion to Turning on the Lights to aid educators in adapting the learning culture strategies for classrooms, academic programs, and support services. Outside of my MESA program, the first revolutionaries were student leaders in San Diego area STEM chapters at San Diego State University and the University of California, San Diego, who completed the online, self-paced learning culture training. The revolutionaries were primarily juniors and seniors, underrepresented in STEM majors, and first-generation college students. This chart reflects the impact of the self-paced training. Based on a 1 to 10 scale, with 1 corresponding to not familiar and 10 corresponding to very familiar, the chart provides a summary of the students' familiarity with the learning culture as captured in Turning on the Lights, before and after the self-paced training. These results capture the significant impact of the training, with an average before to after increase of 63.8% across all parts. And they also illustrate the substantial challenge faced by students who are in the dark with regards to the learning culture. The first revolutionaries were primarily juniors and seniors, and they experienced the learning culture through trial and error. What does this imply for entering first-year students, especially first-generation college students and students beginning in community colleges? The fact is that all entering students have much to learn about the learning culture when they begin their college studies. Here are reflections from the first revolutionaries after completing the learning culture training. Reflecting on the training for part 1, why learning culture? A student shared, "I learned how the learning culture can really change lives and provide a roadmap for success. This student is clearly ready to enjoy the learning culture experience." About part 2, having a mindset for learning. A student shared, "What was new to me was the section relating to the purpose for the learning, that is, freedom. I had not stopped to think before that your knowledge and skills could give you the freedom to define yourself." This is a very powerful reflection. This student will not be defined by others, outcomes, or situations. About part 3, knowing how to approach the learning. A student shared, "This was very insightful since it got down to the nitty-gritty of how to do the learning in a way that can save time and improve your performance. What was new to me was a preparation before class, since everyone I know usually arrives and begins to either prep at the moment or after class, and they do not understand the lecture. Sadly, this behavior is very common for students who are in the dark with regards to the learning culture. But the student revolutionary now knows how to effectively approach the learning." About part 4, leadership, internships, and research, a student shared, "What was most helpful was how to differentiate between the importance of IQ versus EQ, which is emotional intelligence. Where IQ is very helpful in the early stages of your career as you prove your skills, knowledge, and intellect in whatever endeavor you choose, whereas EQ helps with advancing your career as a leader. This student clearly understands what it takes to become a successful leader." About part 5, educational planning basics, things to know. A student shared, "I previously learned a lot of what was explained, but I did it through my own experience, especially with drops and withdrawals. I really do wish that I would have had access to this prior to entering college. Unfortunately, this experience is shared by too many students because they're simply not very familiar with educational planning basics." Finally, about takeaways. A student shared, "My biggest takeaway is that everyone has potential, and that through learning how to navigate the learning culture, you can achieve your goals." Again, this is a very powerful reflection. This student is clearly empowered with the learning culture to create her own success in academics and life. This is a learning culture revolution. and this revolution needs revolutionaries. Educators, I invite you to use Turning on the Lights to spark this revolution wherever you know it is needed. And students, this is your revolution. Don't wait. Complete the learning culture training immediately to begin creating your success in the bright light of the learning culture. In closing, I remind you of the purpose for the learning. That is freedom. If you own the learning culture and freedom is the goal, then what's going to stop you from achieving this goal? If you answer nothing and you own it in your mind and in your heart, then that is true power. What will be your learning culture story? Enjoy the journey. God bless.